Okay, so in this part we are going to be looking at the scripts tab. I've created a small small piece of JavaScript code that's going to allow us to demonstrate this. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at this piece of code. We're going to be inspecting some of the variable values. We're going to be changing the JavaScript. We're also going to be stepping through the program as well. So we'll be able to sort of play around with the JavaScript. And it's extremely useful, as well as being able to see all the scripts on our page and search through them. So we've got the blank page here. I'm going to go ahead and right click and inspect, and I'm going to head over to the scripts tab. Now the only script that we're using at the moment is global.js. If we want to see the rest, we can go ahead and click this script navigator. You can see here that global.js is the only one. So let's go ahead and focus on global.js. Now first of all, what happens when we click on this click here? Well, we're getting this element by ID, so we know that when we inspect this, it's got an ID of click here. So we know that when we click on this, so on click, we run an anonymous function. We set a variable with the name shout to the value true, and then we alert out this value. So in this case, when we click on it, click here, it'll just say true. Okay, that's fairly obvious. So a simple 4-line piece of code. Now, what happens if we want to experiment with the behavior of this? What happens if we don't know the value of a particular variable? Say we had a 300-line JavaScript code. We would need to sort of dive in here and look at things in a bit more detail. And we can also set conditions as well. So the first thing that we're going to do is go ahead and inspect the value of these variables. So I'm going to go ahead here and click pause, and I'm going to click here. Now what's happened is it has stopped at this point on the page. So here we haven't clicked on anything yet and nothing's been set. So we're essentially paused on the first line. It gives us lots of information here, but we're going to be focusing on looking at these particularly local variables here. So the variable shout is undefined currently. We know it's there, but it's undefined. What we can do is step through this program, so we can step through line by line. So as I step onto the next line, shout's still undefined, but when we get to the next line, because of this statement here, it's been set to true. So now after we've finished executing alert shout, we know that when we step into the next, it says we have an alert box saying true, or alert dialog saying true, and then we're at the end of our program, nothing left to do. So we can actually go ahead and modify the functionality of our application directly. So I could go ahead, for example, highlight true, change this to false, and go ahead and save it. You can see we've got a little star here, so I'm going to go ahead and press Control and S, and that saved that. So what we can now do is I'm going to go ahead and, in fact, let's refresh and do this. So I've refreshed the page. I'm going to go ahead and highlight this, type in false, save that out, go ahead and click here. And that has changed our application. What we could also do is we could also say the value of shout is, Control and S, click here, the value of shout is false. So we can modify this in any way that we would normally modify it within our code. It's just, again, like the CSS modifications, the HTML modifications. It's just a lot easier than doing it in your code. And you also have the added benefit that we can go ahead and inspect the value of different variables and step through our program. So we're now going to look at the breakpoint, and we're going to add some conditions based on this. So for example, I'm going to add a breakpoint here, and I'm going to add I'm going to edit the breakpoint to add a condition. Now why am I doing this? Well, when you're creating a JavaScript application, you might want to go ahead and set specific conditions in here based on variable values. Again, just a lot easier than going ahead over to your code and doing this. And this is also really great for debugging as well, with different variable values and return values, things like that. So the breakpoint on line 2 will stop only if this expression is true. So I'm going to say if shout is equal to true. Use the triple equals. So when I go ahead and click here, it has paused on this breakpoint because shout is equal to true. So we've paused on this breakpoint, and our condition, remember, is it will pause on the breakpoint if shout is equal to true, because shout is equal to true. So I'm going to go ahead and change this. Let's go ahead and refresh again. I'm going to go ahead and change this to false, save it. I'm going to edit the breakpoint, and I'm going to say only break at this point if shout is equal to true. Now, you've probably guessed it, when I click on here, it runs the script. There's no breakpoints. We haven't stopped at any breakpoints, and that's because the condition wasn't met. So if you're looking at your program and thinking, oh, I really wish there was an easy way to debug this with the variable values that I've got within the browser. I don't want to go ahead and add, a ton of loads of, if statements and stuff to check certain things. Go ahead and use debug within here. It's extremely straightforward. Again, it's one of them things you need to play around with to get used to, but you can go ahead and modify things, set breakpoints, set conditions for breakpoints. So that's essentially the script tab in Google Chrome Web Developer Tools.